All right, guys, welcome to episode 6 of the Strong Father Co-podcast. If you're watching this on video, I apologize for the mess that is the background. And by mess, I mean like there's this one thing that's bothering me and whatever. I almost didn't record this again, so didn't have an episode last week, had a little bit of travel for a mastermind that I went to, so kind of like a mini conference, bunch of online coaches getting together. Super cool, learned a lot, got a lot of useful takeaways there, but I almost didn't record again this week. It's just the week's been a little crazy. We have a sick kid, had a sick kid. Just, it's funny how a rough night of sleep, couple of rough nights of sleep really throws a wrench in everything. So I literally only have 45 minutes left until my next call. And usually I've been recording these, they've been like, 60 minutes. And it's funny, the reason I share this is that same resistance that I know a lot of guys share because I have conversations with them about, hey, you have a 1 hour workout planned or whatever, a 45-minute workout planned, and you either, for whatever reason, have less time or you get down there, something comes up, the kids want something, and all of a sudden that time is diminished and now it feels like you can't do what you had planned for. And what do we always do, or what do most guys always do? It's that becomes the reason you then don't do anything. And that's exactly what was about to happen with me recording this episode, because I had planned my entire day. I was going to have this 1 hour, maybe a little bit more window so that I could record. If I go over an hour, great. It was perfect. It was on my calendar, record podcast, and fell behind on a couple things. Had to go inside the house, scarf down some food because it was going to be my only opportunity to have some back-to-back calls after this. And I ended up with, I have 40 minutes now. And it was going to be, okay, guess I didn't get to the podcast this week. So I'm glad I hit record. I'm glad we're here. We're going to wrap for 40 minutes. It's going to be a good 40 minutes. But hopefully this reminder serves someone listening that you're always better off getting the 20-minute, 30-minute workout when maybe you were planning for something longer, or whatever it is. You were planning to meal plan all your meals for the upcoming week, and maybe you only have time to get a little bit done. One of the most impactful things that I ever heard about nutrition, and I share this all the time. This was at an event I went to a few years ago. There was this lady, Mary Ruth, who owns a supplement company. And the conference I went to was like a Gary Vee event, which will tie to one of the things I want to talk about today. And it was his VCon conference when NFTs were like a huge thing. I had invested in one of those, and that got me access to go to this conference. It was awesome. But she was giving a talk, and it was more about like branding and building a company. Like, it was very much a marketing conference. But being someone that's built like a supplement company in like the health and fitness space, she mentioned that she gets a lot this question of like, what do I do to improve my nutrition? What do I do to improve my health? And I was curious because being in the health and nutrition space, I'm always wondering what kind of advice other people are dishing out. And she said that she said nutrition specifically, but I think this applies to both fitness and nutrition, comes down to a stress and time management kind of problem. It's not the workout plan. It's not, the diet. I think that especially now with AI and so many of us having access to more information that we know what to do with, and pretty good information, is everything that comes out of ChatGPT 100% accurate? No, and I think that that's becoming pretty true, but we have access to definitely more, and I think, better information that we had in the past. I think that if you actually spend some time and energy sifting through and doing some research on anything that you'd like to, whether that's training, nutrition, or anything else, you can, learn quite a bit. So most people have access to what they should be doing from a nutrition and fitness standpoint, yet so many people don't do it. And I think that it's at the crux of it is exactly what, this lady, Mary Ruth, presented that day, which is nutrition and fitness is a time and stress management problem. We make poor decisions with our fitness and nutrition when we either run out of time or we're very high on stress. And I think that as soon as you reframe that in your mind, it's helpful because it forces you to fix and target the things that will matter, which is how well are you managing your stress and how well are you managing your time. Wanted to share that because in this season of life where stress is, arguably pretty high. By the way, I have no idea why I'm so out of breath. So if you hear me breathing a bunch, maybe it's because I literally ran in here from the house and just like hit record, but I feel like I'm out of breath. I think that when it forces you to figure out how good your stress management and time management is, everything else will get easier, including your health, your fitness, your nutrition. It's one of the things I work on with, my athletes who it does come up as that being an area of improvement. Moving your workouts to early in the morning so that, you don't have wrenches being thrown at you in the middle of the day and now you can't get the workout in. What are the biggest food prep, meal prep, having snacks with you? I work with a lot of guys who have demanding jobs, whether it's law enforcement or just long days, a lot of work travel. So what do you have access to in the times where, not like the average person, you're going to be somewhere where you can cook a meal or access an easy meal. You might be in a patrol car, you might be flying, you might be in an airport, you might be stuck behind your desk because you have back-to-back meetings and calls. Whatever the situation is, you have to prepare for that. And I think that it's when you realize that you're short on time or, or high on stress. I was going to say overdone on stress. I don't know if that's the way to say it, that you end up making the poor decision. So anyway, I think that that's kind of a good takeaway. First thing I wanted to chat about today, I've been thinking a lot about, is I went to this event last week. It's the reason I didn't get a podcast out. And I haven't talked about yet the Gary Vee event I went to either. So I posted on Instagram a little bit of an update because I was so excited about this Gary Vee event. So months back, when I first launched Strong Father Co., and this was very exciting, I happenstance, and this ties back to the other Gary Vee event, because I'm still a holder of these NFT tokens that Gary sold a while back, I get access to certain things that he promotes every now and then as a token holder, which has been pretty cool. So one of the things that I got access to was this platform called Stan, which is where, if anyone listening has bought my ebook, that's kind of where I sold it through. So in the time where I gave notice to my full-time job that I was going to be going out on my own and doing this fitness thing, it just so happened that I got an email that as a token holder of these NFTs, I would have access to this platform that Gary Vaynerchuk, is an investor in. For someone that doesn't know who Gary Vaynerchuk is, he's a serial entrepreneur, investor, very successful, online personality, does a bunch of things. And I've been a big fan of his content for a long time. I really appreciate the fact that, like me, he's a first generation immigrant, building some really, really cool stuff. I think his messaging is very positive, and I think he does a really good job marrying what some people would maybe call hustle culture and this idea of success takes a lot of work and a lot of sacrifice. And, the idea that you can build something special with a 9 to 5 and that's pretty much it, I think is dishonest and just leads to disappointment. So I appreciate a lot of the stuff that he's put out, and I've appreciated it for a long time. So me getting access to this platform, him being an investor in, I was immediately bought in. The serendipity of the timing also was very cool because I needed something exactly like this. So I joined what was an 8-week challenge for people using this platform to sell online, ebooks, resources, courses. And the whole thing was to keep people engaged through the challenge. The top 10 earners would be flown out to spend a day with Gary and his team. Pretty cool trip. But also, just so that, if you fall behind, you don't get discouraged, anyone that made over $500, I think it was, would be entered to randomly win the opportunity to be a part of that group, to be the same. They were the wild card winners. So I sold the Strong Father Co. training ebook on that platform during this challenge timeframe. So if you got one, you're a part of, the success and reason that I got to go out there. I was not one of the top 10 earners. Some people on that platform are doing some really, really cool stuff and building some really successful businesses, which was cool to be in the same room, meet and learn from them. But I was chosen as one of the wildcard winners. So that was cool. And I know, being someone that's worked for a company that does, giveaways, giveaways are never random, and you're usually trying to in some way self-select people that might have cool stories or be able to be a cool testimonial for the thing that you're trying to promote. So I had an interview with the people that run this platform, just kind of hear like what I'm doing, what Strong Father Co is, what's my why. And I guess that went well enough that they picked me to be one of these wildcard winners. So super cool, but I definitely wasn't one of these like crazy top earners that built a massive online business, at least yet, right? So I got to fly out. This was in January. This was also, for anyone that's been listening to this podcast and heard the first episode and just a couple updates, that was the trip to New York that we went to while our house was getting checked out when we found all the water damage. But anyway, I go to this Gary Vee event, and one of the things that I've learned about myself recently, especially in this entrepreneurship journey that I'm on, trying to build this business, and a business that, very much relies on me and me alone right now, for now at least. One of the things that I've learned about myself is that I really don't have I don't know if confidence is the right word, but the give zero shits that a lot of these very successful online entrepreneurs have. And I don't think that comes from I don't know. I think that you see some of these people sometimes that have zero problem promoting and talking about what they do. And sure, I think that maybe for some people it comes off as like a little bit too much and pushy. But I think that for everyone that I've met, both through this Gary Vee event I went to and more recently this coaching mastermind, which I'm very lucky to be a part of as well, there's a lot of people out there that are doing really cool stuff in the coaching space, in the online space, actually putting out useful information, courses, coaching that I think is genuinely so incredibly helpful, and they're having such a positive impact on people's lives. And they believe it. They believe it to their bones, and they have zero problem, screaming that from the rooftops and doing everything that they can to get what they do in front of as many people as possible. And I think that, or at least I thought that I do that too. I talk about Strong Father Co. online, on Instagram, on this podcast as much as I can. And I 100% believe that when I'm building, and I have so much confidence because the guys that I do work with are seeing incredible results, and I can just see how important what I'm providing, not just through my one-on-one coaching either, but through the content I put out, through this podcast, through the newsletters I sent out. I really hope that there is value and inspiration and just whatever nudge any dad man needs to, really kind of take their health and fitness seriously and live up to their potential and train for big races and sign up for a marathon. I hope, but I also know that what I'm doing is having that impact, because I hear from guys all the time, whether they're my athletes or just people on Instagram. So the belief is there, but the one thing that I've learned about myself is that, I've always been a back of the classroom type of guy. In school, never the one to raise my hand, ask questions, participate. It was kind of the thing that I would always get constructive criticism on. I was a good student in school. I got good grades, being in an immigrant family that values that stuff and, is very, very strict about those results, those academic results. I was always a good student. I got good grades, but I was never the student that was, very engaging in class. I would sit in the back, I would take notes, I would study for tests, I would do well, I would take my homework and projects seriously, but I was never the guy having the conversations or whatever. And I think that now in this space that I'm trying to be successful in, I'm great one-on-one. And I hope my athletes, who I know a bunch of them listen to this podcast, would agree. I bring all the energy and expertise and everything that I have to the one-on-one coaching calls that I have with those athletes. And even the calls with prospective athletes that, I talk to on Instagram and are curious about coaching. And I'm very, very good in that setting. I'm very good in group settings. The one thing I miss about coaching CrossFit, coaching group class, is, being able to command a room and take people through a great experience with fitness and make that the best hour of their day. Like, I genuinely miss that. And if it wasn't for the logistics and time constraints and, just how busy I am doing this, I would still coach at our local gym here, which I was doing for a while before we had kids, because it's so fun. And like, that stuff 100% fills my cup. But for some reason, when I get into a room of, like, I guess what would be my peers, right? So like, either in this room at this Gary Vee event with other, entrepreneurs and people building online businesses, or more recently, this mastermind with a bunch of online coaches, I very much like retract back to this, like, I don't even know if I would call it insecure, but into this, like, hey, I'm just happy to be here. Like, I have no questions. I'm definitely not going to like do anything that puts me, that even like potentially might, like, someone else might think that, like, well, that was a dumb question, or like, why would you, that's a distraction from what the speaker is doing. Like, I'm keeping my hand down. I'm taking notes. I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to learn from other people asking questions, but like, I'm not the one to like, kind of like speak up, pipe up. And at the Gary Vee event, I'm definitely not the one to like, like self-promote what I'm doing in the context of being there, because obviously at the Gary Vee event, there was like a lot of content being captured, and the whole thing was that you had the chance to go up and ask Gary a question, and that was being filmed. And a bunch of the other people there, they were like, hey, can you film on my phone? And like, had a microphone, and like, would set up a tripod and not care, like, if it was like in someone's way, like, excuse me, like, they just didn't care what other people thought about what they had to do to make the most of the experience. And I fall so far on the other side of that spectrum, to where, like, I literally just feel very, very lucky and fortunate to be there, and I'm learning and I'm paying attention, but I'm not like, initiating a lot of what I think ended up being a huge missed opportunity. And I share this because I think we all have different areas in our life where we know we're falling short, or it's an area that's a weakness for what we're trying to accomplish. Whether that is fitness and nutrition, and it's an area where we haven't prioritized, we know we could be doing better, we know we'd show up as better professionals, dads, husbands, whatever, if we worked out a little bit more consistently, if we were more intentional about our diet. That, for me, I'm very fortunate, has all just been habits that I've built throughout the years, and it's not a concern for me. I enjoy working out. I have found a very good balance and moderation with my diet. Like, that stuff just kind of comes naturally. But there are other areas in my life where I do feel like I'm lacking. And that's not to be harsh on myself, but I think it's to be objective and constructive, in that I need to get better at that. Like, I need to be more outspoken. I need to be more confident in these opportunities where I'm around my peers. And sure, I might not be as accomplished as them. I might not be as established, but I can get there quicker if I become more of the person that isn't afraid to ask questions, isn't afraid to share, isn't afraid to participate. There was one example at the mastermind this weekend where they did this really cool mindset exercise. And if you volunteered, you essentially got one-on-one coaching from the person that was presenting. And I thought it was actually very impactful. But man, like, I would never be the one to like go through the process and share some of the stuff that they shared. And I think that, that to me is one example, is I think those people got a lot from that session, because they didn't care what anyone was going to think about some of the stuff they shared, or they were just, what mattered more to them was just getting the most of the experience. And I think that that's one of the early lessons that I'm learning here in trying to build this business and trying to be a successful entrepreneur, is that the people that seem to be the most successful in the space just don't care. They give zero shits what anyone else might think, what anyone else might say. They have a clear like direction. They have clear goals. They have, a clear mission that they're on, and like, get the heck out of their way. And the craziest thing is that, like, I guess my fear in participating, or maybe asking a question that like wasn't the right question to ask, is this fear that like other people might think that I'm wasting the time that we have as a group, or like, man, how's that guy in this room? If those are the questions that, like, the biggest human fear is, fear of judgment, right? Like we all don't want to be judged. And I think that the interesting learning for me too has been like all I have felt for the people that are the most outspoken and the most like just bold in their self-promotion and, like making sure that they make the most of these experiences I've been a part of. The only thing I have felt for them is like super proud of, like, admiration. Like I just admire them having the confidence to just like be exactly who they are and believe in what they're doing and do everything in their power to like, continue to move them in the ball direction. Like I have not for a second felt any judgment or anything negative. And I think that that's honestly most people. And so the fear of piping up and being the more outspoken, active participator in some of these settings, the fear of someone looking at that in a negative light, I think is so unfounded now that I think about it. And I hope that sharing this and really doing some like reflection on, hey, this is somewhere where I need to get better if I'm going to be successful or as successful as I want to in this space, like networking, getting the most of mentorships that I'm in, and coaching and asking questions and just, and then taking action. And even the taking action part, I don't think is something that's particularly an area of weakness for me. Like I've had so much to do this week because I had so many takeaways and ideas and inspiration from, this past event that I was on. And like I've done them. Like I revamped a lot of my onboarding process, revamped like how I talk to people on Instagram and next steps to kind of like see if coaching is a good fit. A lot went into changing this week because I'll do the work. I think that the missed opportunity is me connecting with people at these events, me kind of coming out of my shell a little bit and like being someone that's memorable and that other people, want to collaborate with and in the future, which I saw a lot of happening around me, but just I didn't participate. So yeah, I think that, it's funny because for someone that has a podcast, and like, I'm more than happy to have these like, 40 to 60 minute conversations with hundreds of people that listen. And, the audience was even bigger when I was on the Jason Khalipa podcast. There are certain settings where I definitely need to come out of my shell a little bit more. And I think that that's the unlock that I need to get through to like, for everything that I do to grow to the level that I want it to. So all of that to share that we're all figuring it out. We're all trying our best here. But I think that one of the most important things is like really reflecting and acknowledging when you feel like there's an area where you are falling short in, and what do you need to do to get better? And then just do it, like you just got to do it. Anyway, so that's something that I've been thinking a lot about. I took some notes at the mastermind for stuff I want to talk about on the next podcast. Another thing I wrote, I don't need people's approval. I know a big reason people don't like posting on Instagram, posting anything that might, have your parents, your siblings, your friends be like, oh man, like he's posting this stuff now, or like he's trying to be an influencer now, like those dreaded words stops a lot of people from sharing probably really interesting and insightful and valuable insights. I think everyone has so much value in sharing kind of what they're going through, specifically like, in kind of like my scope, like fitness, parenting. Like I think we'd be in a much better place if more people like shared honestly, like what's going well, what isn't, kind of behind the scenes, and not just like so much highlight reel of life as a dad, something that I'm trying to do a good job of sharing and being very honest about. And I think that, we do that a lot because we want other people's approval. Like I think that when it comes to social media, and I don't think that a lot of people listening to this podcast specifically are people that are like actively trying to like, grow on social media, post on social media, all of the challenges that come with that space. But it's funny because I can speak to this. There's so many things that I would want to talk about that I think are interesting, worth saying, valuable, that maybe I don't, or I soften the message before I put it out, literally because there's like one or two people that I know that would either think differently or, potentially, or maybe think differently of me if they knew that I felt that way. And so you like self, you filter out those things and don't put them out there, even though they're things that like you would like to share otherwise. And that's the funny part is it's like one or two people in your mind, and they kind of stop you from putting that stuff out. So I think that on social media, that's something that I've definitely been able to, just with like time and reps, overcome, but it's like still there, and I get it. And I think that that's the same thing that kind of like stops me in these in-person events. So something I'm definitely trying to get better at. One of the other things I thought this was interesting, and I'll share this. I don't think I've met, that's not true, Dennis, who's one of my obviously really good friends. Anyone that used to listen to the home team episode, I'm still trying to get him on the podcast. He's a busy man. But Dennis is one of the only people that I've shared this with that like appreciated it for what it is and has one of these posters too. So I have my life in week posters, which, man, now that I think about it, originally my inspiration for getting one of these was, I'm not even going to say his name, but someone in the public health space who is now persona non grata for, some connections to the whole Epstein controversy. But anyway, we don't have to go there. But I saw online the idea of this poster, and it's a life in week poster. So maybe I'll, if this is a clip on social media, I'll crop in an image of it. But you can look it up, life in week posters. And what it is essentially a grid of these little black dots. Well, they're black when you fill them in. So it's a grid of these dots, and you fill in each dot when you go through a week. So you can buy it, and based on when you were born, it comes pre-filled with how currently old you are. So each row is a year of your life. So it's got 52 weeks, 52 dots. And it essentially is like a visual representation of your life in weeks, assuming that, I think it uses like, you can set how long you want it to go, but like somewhere around like 84 or 90 years old as kind of like an estimated lifespan. And then you fill in these dots for every week that goes by. So you have a visual representation of like, where are you at in life? Like how much time do you have left? And, whenever I share that with anyone or they see it in our house, their first comment that it's like a very morbid thing to have. But one of the things that Will Nelson, who's kind of like the head of this, online coaching mentorship group that I'm a part of, who hosted the mastermind, a big part of his presentation is like, we're all going to die someday. And again, I know that that's a morbid thought to have, but I think that the perspective of the life in week posters, which I love, I have it in my room, and this idea that I have leaned into, and I appreciated him presenting on it, is, like we have one life. And I know it's like the most like cliche, cheesy thing to say, but we do. And I think that, whether we dismiss it because it's like a cliche thing to say, or because, rightfully so, there's like a very real fear to, our time on earth ending. There's a frame there that I think is incredibly powerful, especially now that I have kids, in that this isn't like an unlimited ride that we're on. And I saw a Instagram video the other day. There was like our biggest fear as parents is running out of time. And it's true. Like, man, these kids are growing up so fast. And every single, like, there's already so many seasons that are done. Like, Shay's not a baby anymore. That's done. Like, having our first baby boy, as much as those seasons also come with hardships, like, they're also incredibly beautiful and magical in many ways. And that's it. Like, our time as parents with our first kid, and how much like novelty and joy and just overwhelming love you have for kids, and you discover that when you have your first, like, that's done. That ship has sailed, and it's never coming back. And I don't think about that in a negative way. I think about it And I think about it I think about it often, in that I can either be present and making the most of whatever season we're in now, or not, and then just look back and wish that I did. And I think that that's a very positive frame to live life through. I personally think that. I completely understand and see how it's like, well, that's pretty morbid and it's sad. And like, why would you want to remind yourself, every time you fill in a bubble or fill in a whole row because a year has gone by, that you're that much closer to this poster being full? And like, how are you going to feel when because right now it doesn't look mostly full, right? Like that's, I guess, the promising thing about now. I'm 35. The whole poster is meant to be like 84. So it's not even half full, which to me is super exciting. Like I have so much of my life ahead of me and I have so much time to build this thing that I want to build and to create, opportunities and to provide experiences to my family. Like there's so much time. And then me and Ariel talk about all the time, as much as, we love and absolutely love our kids, there's also this like really exciting season in our marriage where, because, we take care of our fitness and our health and we try and do everything as possible to be capable for decades and decades, there's going to be a really fun season in our lives where, me and her get to have like a whole other decade of just us and going on a bunch of crazy adventures, which we love and love to do before kids. Like we're going to get to do all of that, once kids are building their own lives. And then I also see how much my parents just love being grandparents. And then like we get super excited about that season. So there's just so much to come that I think it's marrying the excitement of there's so much life left. And like, we're doing everything now to make sure that we can make the most of that future. But also like every stage that you're in, you're only going to be in it once. And I think it's a good reminder to like enjoy it for what it is. So something I think a lot about, and I'm glad it got brought up in the mastermind, because sometimes I do struggle with how much time I spend on work now. I made an Instagram video the other day, and this is a very real thought. I don't think I was naive as to how much work it was going to be to like go out on my own and try and, coach a bunch of clients, get a bunch of clients, make sure that I pour everything that I have into these guys, because they, make a big investment in working with me, and I don't take that lightly. So there's a lot of time. There's a lot of time talking to everyone, getting on calls with everyone, getting on calls with people that maybe want to be athletes, making sure I answer every single person that, reaches out on Instagram, whether they're going to be athletes in the program or not. Like I'm genuinely trying to help. And that takes a lot of my time, and it takes a lot of time of me being on my phone, which is, that in itself is a struggle. It's like trying to balance doing what's necessary to build this business to the point that I want to build it without feeling like my head is glued to my phone, especially when I'm around the kids, right? Like all of this, even as I'm saying it out loud, is such a fine balance, because this season with my kids is temporary, right? Like I just said that all of these times are passing. I'm trying to be present, but at the same time, I'm trying to build a business where I have to live on this device more hours than maybe I'd like, and definitely more hours than is ideal. For anyone not watching on video, I was holding up my phone. So it's definitely been a challenge, and I try and tell myself that, it's a season now to like really grind and hustle, because I'm trying to create the flexibility for when they're a little bit older. I think Alex Hormozy said this once, and I know some people don't like Alex, but he has a couple gems. But it's like you can sacrifice a little bit of being present in the years that they won't remember, so that you're present in the years that they'll never forget. And that hit me pretty hard. And I think I subscribe to that. Obviously, you can poke holes in that philosophy as well. But I do think there's something to be said about, like, I don't remember much about anything before I was 5 years old, right? So our oldest is 3 right now. I do think that I have a unique opportunity now, and, that opportunity is going to get smaller and smaller, to where I can spend as much time as humanly possible in this office, behind this screen on my phone, trying to be as present and build a community and build, a following and, a cadre of athletes that I help and really create an impact, so that hopefully this turns into something where it can continue to have that impact and not rely on like my one-on-one time anymore. And that's not to say that I would ever want to pull back from the things where I have the biggest impact and that I enjoy the most, which is coaching my athletes, talking to my athletes, and like really investing all my time and energy on the guys that have invested in me. Like that's my number one priority. And that's something that I never want to stop doing. But, building out email flows, like building out ad campaigns, setting up ad campaigns, editing videos, editing content, posting content, putting together like financials, like seeing how financials are matching up with forecasts that I have, like all of that stuff. I would love to offboard as soon as possible and get that time back so that I can be more present for my kids during the years where they'll never forget, right? Like I think back on some of my core memories, and they start maybe around like 7 years old, I think, because a lot of like my best core memories with my dad start when my sister was born. Like I remember camping trips and birthdays and like really fun bike rides that we used to do. My dad used to take us. My dad still has this bike trailer, by the way. It's insane. One of the most admirable things about, like I guess, I don't know if my parents are boomers, but I'm going to call them like boomer parents, is the amount, like how much care they give to their stuff. Because I mean, we grew up not with much, and it's fascinating as I was sharing, one of these things my dad would do is we would park in Brooklyn and I would ride my bike. My dad would ride his bike, and then he had this little trailer that would go behind his bike where he would take my sister, and we had like these family friends. They would come too a couple times, and we would ride across the Brooklyn Bridge and then go to the South Street Seaport, because my dad actually used to work in that area, and get these pretzel dogs and lemonade. And, we would hang out there. The South Street Seaport, like a super cool area. And then we would ride our bikes back. I remember that clear as day. Like literally I'm getting the smell of the South Street Seaport as I share that story. And so I think about that. I think about, those core memories kind of starting around 7 and like really ramping up from there. And at least in my mind, Shay's 3 now, I have like 4 to 5 years. I have 4 to 5 years to build something special, build like an actual business, not just like a glorified job, to where I can have the impact that I want to have, step away from it enough. And the whole reason that I did this was, to build something where I can be the present dad that I know I want to be. So that's kind of my timeline there. And it sounds like pretty sound logic as I talk about it out loud, but that's kind of what I'm thinking. That's where my head is. It's like I'm in the years that they won't remember, and I have coming up the years that they'll never forget. And that's what I'm building towards. And it also kind of falls in line with this idea of like, I'm 35, 4 or 5 years. Like 40 to me is like a big milestone to get to that point. And I appreciate everyone that's listening to this, and definitely to the guys that have, joined the program and are seeing awesome results because of it, but are also a part of this like dream that I have to build something special and build it on the foundation of like having a really, really positive impact on men and helping them also show up as like the best dads that they can be. That's what Strong Father Co is about. And so, it's been an interesting few first months of entrepreneurship. It's been an interesting, like these past couple events. I thought I was going to have time to like share some like specific fitness, nutrition stuff, but just ended up blabbing about, this past couple weeks and my Life in Weeks poster and my, my 5-year plan. So hopefully, you guys find this stuff interesting. I really enjoy sharing, and I do genuinely think that there aren't as many outlets as maybe I think of just I don't know, just like dads, parents in general, actually. And I think Ariel, my wife, does a good job of sharing this stuff too. If you don't follow her on Instagram, sharing like the good, but also the bad and the ugly of being parents in the context though. And this is important of net, it's like the most incredible, wonderful thing on the planet. But that's not to say that there isn't a lot of hardship and self-doubt and all sorts of other like negative thoughts that go through your head. So yeah, hopefully sharing this stuff is something that you guys enjoy. And please, reach out with stuff you'd like me to cover in the future on the podcast. Constructive feedback on, what maybe you want me to talk about a little bit less. But that's kind of been the latest update here. I'm really glad I got to recording. I'm running to the end of my 40 minutes that I had here to record. So I'm going to jump on a call with one of my many awesome athletes to see how he's doing and just kind of keep progress going in the right direction. But I appreciate you guys for listening. I promise I'll be less out of breath next time. I don't know why I feel like I'm still out of breath. And yeah, please leave a rating. Please leave a review. And please, if you haven't already, subscribe, follow, whatever it is on the platform that you're listening this to. But I appreciate you guys. And yeah, we'll be on the podcast next time. Maybe I'll get Dennis on. Maybe he'll finally text me back and we can nail the time. All right. Bye guys.